Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Future Visit to 2100. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support this channel, you can do so on Patreon. And we have 4 new supporters here. Soul Accordant is an Astral Master. David L. is an Astral Scout. Catherine S. is an Astral Scout. And Adam B. is an Astral Master. And they get commercial-free advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for their podcast apps, and a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth. And if you're interested, you'll find a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson to learn to astral project, all you have to do is go into the description, find the email there, and just request information on private lessons. Okay, let's get started. One of the early episodes that I made was Back to the Future, astral time travel. And in this time travel, I went to the early 22nd century. And I observed there was these shelters that people had prepared and were going into because they saw that a tsunami, an enormous one, was coming. And apparently this happens often enough that it merited having shelters for people who were in vulnerable areas, and this was close to the coast, the eastern coast. But that's not what I want to talk about. The thing that really got me interested, and I only really got a little bit of information on it at the time, was this implant that everybody had, this brain implant that allowed them to communicate with one another, to access information. It had a whole gamut of abilities that were quite fascinating. But as I said, there was a lot going on. I could only spend a limited amount of time there, maybe a half an hour, and then I returned to my body. Since then, I've been consumed by this implant and what its capabilities are and how it might be used in a possible future. Now, anybody who's paid attention, and I certainly did a lot of research when I originally got back to my body, and for instance, Elon Musk is working on something called Neuralink, which he believes in the future, after it's been tested on chimps and volunteers and what have you, it'll be something that people will be able to have implanted into their brain and communicate with one another, interact with information, and all kinds of other things. So there is research out there, and evidently in this possible future, something like this is definitely perfected. So I wanted to find out more about this amazing device. So I aimed for around the year 2100. Who knows? Could have been plus or minus 10 or 20 years. You can't be exact when it comes to this kind of stuff. You keep that time frame in mind, and hopefully you land, pretty close to what your shot is. When I did appear, I appeared in a moderately large city. There was a lot of people, walking around. They could see me, although they weren't looking really at me. Everybody was busy going about their business. And they had these preoccupied looks on their faces that remind me a lot of people who walk down the street, with that device in their ears, and then they're communicating with somebody. They're having a phone call. And it's still odd to me to this day, because as a boomer, when I was young, if you saw somebody talking to themselves on the street or walking down the street talking to themselves, they were nuts. Those were the folks who you avoided because they obviously were having some sort of difficulty. Today, however, and it's been like this for a number of years now, just because somebody's walking down the street talking to themselves doesn't mean that they have lost their marbles, that they're, a couple of chicken nuggets short of a Happy Meal, it doesn't mean that anymore. So, you've got to look a little bit more closely to ferret out, you know, the folks who are a little bit out there who talk to things that no one else can see, and of course, business people who are just having business conversations over a Starbucks coffee or just driving in their car, walking down the street, you name it. So, as I was walking down the street, I didn't see any cars. So perhaps they have solved that problem or they've banned the cars from the city. I don't know. I know there are some cities who talk about that kind of stuff. And I know there are some cities in Europe that have discouraged traffic, motor traffic, because it follows up the city and causes pollution and who knows, all kinds of other things. At any rate, I didn't see any personal vehicles going about. But I wasn't there to try to determine what the public transportation system was or the private transportation system, if there is such a thing in the year 2100. No, I was concentrating on one thing, and that was trying to find out what the deal was with this brain implant. And I soon found out that I had arrived in the right possible future, so I was pretty good with my targeting this particular time around. So I started scanning people, light scans as they walked by. I kind of stayed back in an abandoned doorway, just kind of lightly scan people as they went by. I don't do deep scans because that's intrusive. I do light scans, and that gives me the surface thoughts that are buzzing around their head. So not only will you get somebody planning out a business meeting or someone rehashing a fight in their head or thinking about something they're going to buy, or those are the kinds of thoughts you typically can pick up. But what I was doing here was just kind of scanning people as they went by. And I started picking up on something that everyone was thinking about in one way or another, at least in the back of their mind, but still available to a surface scan, was this thing everyone referred to as the Linq. And I got it as LINQ for some reason. I don't know why K's aren't particularly necessary here, but apparently Q had a better ring to it, or it was catchy or something. I don't know. These things can escape me at times. Anyway, it was called the Linq. And as people walked by, I gained a little bit more knowledge from each person that I lightly scanned. And I found out wonderful, amazing things. And I also found out some things that are a little on the dark side. And unfortunately, this seems to be the basic formula that comes with all of our new inventions, doesn't it? Yes, we have these, for instance, wonderful mobile phones. I'm talking on one right now and recording it, and I'll download this podcast from this mobile phone. I can buy things on Amazon with this mobile phone. I've got all kinds of apps. I can listen to music. I can do a million different things. Heck, I can even make phone calls on this thing. It's miraculous. But there are negative consequences that come with our mobile phones. There are people who decide they need to send texts while they're driving. That leads to some very bad things happening. There are folks who you ask out on a date, and I hear this, I see videos. I'm a little old for that kind of stuff at this point in time, except when I take my wife out for a date. As boomers, we don't have a problem. But I've noticed that the younger folks, even when they're out on a date, they're having a nice meal, they can't help but stare at their darn phones. And heck, even I do it sometimes. So it seems like it's something that has not only become irreplaceable, but it's kind of become like a drug. If you leave your phone behind, I've seen people literally begin to freak out, like a drug addict withdrawing from a narcotic. So our phones are wonderful and they've done a lot of great things for us, but they have their dark side as well. And I could go over all kinds of other inventions that we have nowadays that we owe our standard of living to, but they all come with dark sides. And this was no exception. Let's start out with some of the positive things that I picked up. This Linq could do everything. People would go on their jobs and use their links to become trained, to make contacts, to operate within the office, to talk to people anywhere, either in the office or elsewhere, without accessing any other phones or anything. Matter of fact, I didn't see phones in evidence anywhere. The old-fashioned phones on a desk, for instance. I didn't see anyone who actually had that sitting on their desk in their mind's eye. So this Linq was able to connect with people so that it was making your job, training, and also working much easier than it is at present. Everyone from executives to folks working in the service industry were able to use their links to more efficiently process orders from customers and to then fill those orders. And there was a minimal of confusion because the Linq was operating on a telepathic basis, and the signals were so accurate that if somebody ordered a complicated coffee drink, I bet you it could have been produced without ever speaking. One of the good points that I kind of heard is that offices and even the streets are a lot quieter now because you don't have people chit-chatting. I saw people walking around. I saw people side by side, and I could tell they were communicating because I would drop in on the conversation a little bit and listen in. And yes, they were communicating. So it was all telepathic. It was probably a lot more efficient. No misunderstandings involved. And it seemed to be working out pretty darn well. And it was quieter. So we got efficient communication going on, which, geez, isn't that half of our problems, inefficient communication? Next up, entertainment. Now, this was extremely interesting. I saw people who were thinking about playing video games or watching TV. Keep in mind, though, that these terms, I think, are ancient at this point. What I saw was no TV screen, for instance, no computer screen. What I saw was in someone's mind's eye, a program that was broadcast by this globe that sat in the middle of a room. It could be on a table, it could be on the floor. And it projected a very realistic 3D hologram. More than that, the Interlink not only manipulated this whole process and controlled it, but you could play a character in any of your favorite programs. Now, when it came to your typical TV programs, I still use the word TV, I don't know what else to do, but you were able to, say, operate in a side character. You were able to be in, say, a policeman's body who's just standing there listening to the detectives talk about the body that's covered up with a sheet or whatever. So you get to be there. If you choose not to, it was also possible just to take a passive. You could just sit there on your recliner and watch a scene right in front of you that looked as realistic as if those people were standing there in your room. It was quite fascinating. And as I said, if you wanted to kind of be part of the drama, you could do so. Even more interesting, though, was video games. In video games, like I said, I didn't see any particular hand devices or any devices of any kind. What I saw there was once again a globe like the one that controlled the TV. This was a smaller one, though. And what it did was it projected the video game also in a 3D hologram. But this time, you were able to assume the person of the main character. And I could see in their mind's eye that it was realistic. You were involved, deeply embedded in this game. And it seemed like you were actually, like I said, in that castle, or marching in that field and actually fighting the monsters or other soldiers. So it was extremely, extremely realistic, and you were the main character. That's just, I mean, for people who enjoy video games, I think that's pretty much next level. This Linq also could make buying and selling extremely easy. As somebody was walking by, they were ordering a product from some site. They ordered it. I mean, they perused some items. They picked the one they wanted, and they bought and paid for it while they were walking down the street, just using this Linq. I mean, what a miracle that must be. Next up was education. All children had to have this Linq installed by the age of 5, because the educational process all happened from their homes. It was all done remotely. And the Linq was able to broadcast a 3D teacher in the person's living room or bedroom. And you could interact with that teacher or other students by using this Linq. The information that could be shared happened at a much faster rate too. I mean, they were racing through this knowledge. And that's what I got as I scanned this kid. The knowledge that was coming through was just happening at such a fast rate that we can't do it right now, because by using the speech and computers, it's slow. It's all manual. It's slow. This was happening at the speed of thought, and the kids were trained to think faster by using this Linq. This Linq assisted their thought process, assisted them in their ability to grasp this knowledge, to integrate this knowledge, and to be tested on it immediately inside their head. They would take this test, turn it in, it would be automatically graded, and they knew how they did. If they got some things wrong, they could retest. All of this was happening essentially invisibly. It was all happening in a very realistic environment inside their head by the use of this Linq device. I saw the surgery being performed. It was a child. I would say the child was probably a toddler, because it didn't have a diaper on, and it was about that size. And there was no doctor. There wasn't a big surgical suite. It was really a small room. There was a machine in that room that I believe was controlled by AI, and it performed the surgery. It was an outpatient procedure. It wasn't a big deal. I saw this thing make a little incision in the person's head, insert this little device that had these little wires coming from it, and after some work, the head was sealed back up again, and there was something sprayed on the head. You could see the hair had been shaved, but something kind of sealed it up, and it looked almost healed. It was pretty amazing. There was a tech there, and that's the best word I can come up with, because it wasn't a physician. It was somebody who was knowledgeable about the procedure and about monitoring the procedure and about monitoring the equipment. But that was about all. The person was in and out in 20 minutes, half an hour. It was not a big deal. and then it would then take some period of time. I couldn't quite get how long it would take, but it wasn't that long for the child to learn to use it. It was kind of the same thing as learning a language when you're a young child. It starts out slow and then you pick it up faster and faster. Of course, the parents can help the child by using their links. So I saw parent and child interacting without ever opening their mouths. I imagine somebody must make some effort when the kids are young to make sure they can speak. I have to believe that that would still be required, but I can't swear to that. I can't say that I picked that up. But I have to believe that must be going on because I wouldn't think we'd want to lose the ability to speak. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being a caveman. I don't know. So that was pretty amazing. However, let's talk about some of the darker things that I saw. There were people who were like conscientious objectors. They were no links. That's what they were called. They were people who, on a variety of grounds, did not want to get the link. As such, they lived a kind of shadow life. They couldn't buy or sell legally because you needed the link. Everything you bought and sold was not only done via the link, but it was also sent up to the various taxing authorities. People didn't put in tax returns anymore. Instead, a little bit was taxed as sort of a value-added tax like they have in Europe. So whatever you bought or sold, there was a tax paid. So the government controlled that, and they didn't want people buying or selling without the link. You had some people, these were the ones who I mostly picked up on. I didn't actually scan anybody who was a no link, but I scanned people who had thoughts about them, and they did not think very well of these people. They looked down upon them, thought of them as ignorant, superstitious fools. These people were an underclass, sort of like the homeless are today. They couldn't work, at least not at any real jobs, because you needed a link, whether you were a waitress at a restaurant, a coffee barista, or someone who was working as an executive in some sort of big company. I saw that there were some black market jobs, like landscaping kind of stuff, things that were slightly illegal. They were paid in goods, food. This was illegal, but I had the feeling that it wasn't always enforced rigidly because, the government didn't want to have to put all these people in some sort of prison or to arrest them and make a big deal over it, but it was illegal and they did operate in a shadow way. Their children did not get educated in schools because they didn't have links. So they were either educated at home in the old-fashioned way through their parents, or they couldn't read. And essentially they were being left out of the economy. Very, very upsetting things, at least for people like me who are thinking about this right now. Getting back into some more positive things, I saw people controlling their entire home just by thought. It was all linked, so literally you didn't really have to get off your chair very often. Voting was also done by the link. I didn't exactly understand what was going on, but I understood that you could vote and that people did vote by the link, in that it had been going on like that for a while. At first, they had done it gradually, but now, everybody, well, except for that group of religious objectors, had the link, and it was just a lot easier to vote via the link. The results were compiled and updated virtually instantly. So you knew who the winner was, a minute after the polls closed. There was no compiling, no all-night TV shows working through the various government counts. I also saw that it wasn't a matter of money. The government paid for links for people who didn't have the money to pay for them. So there was some sort of a government program to pay for these links. So it wasn't in the United States, at least. I don't know about anywhere else, but at least in the United States, there was a program that would pay if people couldn't afford the link. So the only ones who didn't have it were ones who had some sort of objection to it. Like I said, I told you a little bit about those who were considered religious extremists. I think there was also some smaller bands of people who had various conspiracy theories, the belief that the government was controlling their minds, and so that's why they didn't want to get the link. I don't know. That was the thought, though. So this link is certainly something which has its light sides, certainly. Some very interesting and fascinating sides. It also has some dark sides, too. Hopefully, that this gets worked out. I like the idea of this technology. I'm not so crazy about the dark sides, however. So we'll see what happens. At any rate, I found it very interesting, and then I was pulled back to my body after about a half an hour spent in that future. I mean, I got all the information I needed, so I didn't see any reason to fight coming back. So I just returned to my body because I had to write down all this information to make sure I didn't forget anything. If you found this interesting, please hit the like button, share it with those of like mind, subscribe if you haven't already, and please, questions and comments. You have to have some ideas. What do you think about this link? Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Did you like some of the stuff, maybe about the video games or the cool TV, and maybe you didn't like some of the things? Let me know what you think. I'm very interested in any questions that you had. Oh, by the way, because I know there'll be somebody who asks, the payment was drawn from a digital currency that was an American currency. By that, I mean Canada, the US, and Mexico had a unified digital currency. I guess, at some point in time in the future, we all decide to kind of do a euro thing. And so that's what was being used. I did not get any information about some of the digital currencies that are around today. Oh, the only thing I got was this digital official currency. I think I heard, and I can't be 100% sure of this, but I believe I heard that the government stamped out these individual digital currencies because they were frightened and because they couldn't control them successfully. And listen, what's a government about if it's not control? And they want to tax people using a value-added tax. You can't really do that if they're not using your official currency. So if anybody has any questions about Bitcoin or whatever, I don't know what to tell you. I didn't get any knowledge of that from the people I scanned. So make of that what you will. So at any rate, have a great day. And as always, I will see you on the astral plane.